Following in the footsteps. The Wilson motto translated is, "He who conquers himself." Some of the first settlers of this family came from Berwickshire in ancient times, although as far as I have gone back with my family, the journey starts in 1821 in Lismore and the Isle of Mull. Lismore and Mull are situated on the west coast of Scotland, and the main industries were agriculture and fishing. They were heavily populated in the 1820s, a few years prior to the clearances. The population reached a staggering number of over 10,612. However, by examining today's figures, there can be seen a steep fall in the island's population, which shows that less than 3,000 people inhabit the island of Mull. The question that begs to be asked here is, what is the reason for this fall in population? In the 1840s and the 1850s, during the Highland clearances, the tenant crofters were evicted by the landowners because sheep farming was considered to be more profitable than receiving rent from tenants. The population of Lismore and Mull fell drastically as the people were forced to move by the unscrupulous landowners. Also, the Industrial Revolution was changing the face of towns and cities on the mainland, and crofters made their way from the Highlands to seek opportunities in these places. Also, there was the potato famine in Ireland, which brought people from Ireland looking for work. John McLaughlin was born in Lismore in 1821, and Anne Campbell was born on the Isle of Mull in 1824. John was a quarry labourer and married Anne in 1845. He became a quarrier, stonemason, and they had 9 children: Mary, Catherine, Agnes, Margaret, Alexander, John, Hugh, Peter and Lachlan. Between 1851 and 1861, they moved to Rothsay, where they brought up their family. Mary and Catherine were cotton mill workers in one of the cotton mills. One of the boys became a shoemaker, and another 2 were rope spinners. The first cotton mill in Rothsay was set up in 1779, and by 1855 there were 5 mills. They employed over 1,000 men, women and children. There was a cotton mill in Rothsay built by Robert Thom, who was involved with the reservoirs of Greenock. In Rothsay at that time, many of the families were involved in the boat building and fishing industry and worked around the quay, and that is probably where the rope spinners were employed. There were many and varied jobs to be had in Rothsay. There was also a prosperous distillery in Rothsay. John and Anne and their family lived in a few addresses in Montague Street, High Street and the Gallowgate in Rothsay. They were all near the front and the pier, probably near to their work. In 1888, John's wife Anne went missing, and after 3 days her body was found in Rothsay Bay. It was reported in the local paper at the time that this was a drowning case, when Anne McLaughlin was found drowned in Rothsay Bay. Rothsay played host to a thriving cotton industry for around a century, ranging from around 1780 to 1880. The mill opened in Rothsay in 1779 by a Mr. James Kenyon, was only the second cotton mill to be built in Scotland. The town's proximity to Greenock, where raw cotton was a widely available commodity and the infinite source of water available to the island, allowed for the industry to flourish. It was Robert Thom who engineered 2 water cuts when he took over the ownership of the mill in 1826. The cuts allowed for the machinery to be powered by water, and it was then that the mills became such a major source of employment on the island, with 1,215 men, women and children employed between the 5 mills on the island. That's a considerable amount of the population when you consider the fact that the island only plays host to a mere 4,500 people. However, the cotton industry did not survive the test of time on the island, and by the late 1800s, all of the mills on the island were closed. As of today, 2 mills and the 2 water cuts designed by Robert Thom still survive and lay testament to the industry that once flourished on the small island. One of John and Anne's daughters, Margaret, married James Wilson from Rothsay, who worked as a general labourer. Their family consisted of 5 children, 2 boys, William and James, and 3 girls, Anne, Jeannie and Margaret. William was a coalman, and one of the girls worked as a domestic servant, which was not unusual in those days. Their son William came to Greenock and worked as a dock labourer. He met and married Mary Ann Clark, who worked in the Marina Mill. They married in 1905. They had 7 children: William, Molly, Margaret, Alice, Nan, Thomas, Alec. This picture shows Mary Ann, Molly and Nan. William, or Billy as he was known, was seagoing for many years, and then he came home and emigrated to Canada, where one of his sons and his daughter still stay. Nan emigrated to Australia in 1952 and is still living there. Alec died when he was a young man. Tom has worked in the shipyards all his life. When I started this project, I knew nothing about the paternal side of my family and found this to be very interesting and exciting. It uncovered where my ancestors came from and the journey they made and possibly why they came to Inverclyde. I shall certainly follow this up.